This is All of It. I'm Allison Stewart. Today, we're talking about some of the films being recognized at this year's Independent Spirit Awards, which were held last night at the Hollywood Palladium. Later on in the hour, we'll talk about Twinless, about a complicated bromance between two men whose twins have died. We'll also talk about EFUS, which follows the last hurrah of a small-town recreational baseball league whose field is being replaced by a school building. But first, let's talk about Lurker. What happens when a fan becomes too close to their idol? That's the question at the heart of the psychological thriller Lurker, which follows a normal guy named Matthew and a singer on the edge of fame named Oliver. Matthew is one of those people who has a parasocial relationship with Oliver, and he uses his cleverness and some manipulation to eke out a small corner of Oliver's inner circle. But jealousy and ownership and belittling lead to a toxic mess. An NPR review noted, in his feature debut, Lurker's writer and director Alex Russell gets this paradox just right, on top of a lot of other icky facets of human existence. Lurker was nominated in 4 categories at this year's Independent Spirit Awards, including Best First Feature and Best First Screenplay for writer and director Alex Russell, and Best Lead and Supporting Performances respectively for Théodore Pellerin, who plays Matthew, and Archie Madekwe, who plays Oliver. When Alex and Théodore joined me in the studio to talk about it, I started by asking Alex what aspects of fame he was thinking about as he put the film together.
If I'm being honest, I wasn't thinking that much about fame. I was thinking more about sort of the gravity of a person. Mm-hmm. And, even on like a smaller scale, one person in a group of friends can sort of be the famous one. But thinking about groups of friends and where sort of the gravity lies and who, recently I was thinking about, there's always one person in the friend group who everyone goes to their apartment or something like that. And it's like, why don't we ever go to my apartment? And it's sort of these unspoken, like you were quoting, sort of icky facets of human existence. And I find them very funny, and I find them very sort of, I think they can provide insights about human nature. And I think that's really what I was thinking about. And then fame was sort of almost like a setting, an extreme version of all this, where it's all very clear who's playing what game in the hierarchy. But there was a version of this movie that could have just taken place in like a fraternity or something like that.
That's interesting. Théodore, your character's life changes sort of in an instant at the opening of the film. You stumble on a song that you can put on that Oliver will respond to, and then you play it kind of cool. What did you want us to understand about Matthew in that moment?
Well, I think in that moment, I really, and at the beginning of the film, I really see him as kind of just a child trying to make friends in quite a very honest way. I mean, he is manipulating circumstances and but he's just trying to fit in at the beginning. So yeah, I very much relate to what Alex is saying. To me, it never really felt like it was, the center of it was about fame. It was always about just really wanting to belong to something, and just the fear of being rejected, and also the kind of quick education that someone goes through, learning the codes of a new group, social group, and trying to emulate it to fit in.
Alex, in your director's statement, you mentioned you originally set out to write this script during some free time during the quarantine. Did you have an idea about themes you wanted to write about?
Yes, I think, retroactively, it's easy to articulate the themes. Some of them you just mentioned and sort of the synopsis of the film. But I really think that when I set out to write it, I was not thinking sort of top down in that way thematically. I more so just like had a feeling inside of me that I wanted to explore and sort of purge and extract and unravel. And I knew that themes would come out of that. Whether it be sort of larger like loneliness or belonging or community or sort of desperate way in which people are sort of trying to grasp for scraps in LA. I mean, something I was just thinking about was like, I think people that grow up knowing sort of what their group is and what their community is, and being anchored to that in a healthy way, don't necessarily do what's going on in this movie. They don't move out of their hometown to LA, but LA is full of people who, probably felt rejected by their hometown or never really had one to begin with. And they're all here it's now like the world stage is kind of like their community and where they're trying to fit in, but there is no way to do that. That's why I think about fame as sort of like this, like sort of infinite void of nothingness where like the people who are addicted to it, there's no satisfaction in it whatsoever. It's like you're trying to be known and be seen by an infinite quantity. Fame is like that. I think the feeling of wanting community, but from the entire universe or something.
Preach, you're talking to the choir. Théodore, at what stage did you actually receive the script?
It was a while ago. I auditioned in 2021, and I think we shot in 2024. So yeah, 3 years before shooting, very much during COVID.
And how did you put together your character?
Well, honestly, it was so long ago that I don't really remember. I think that at first I viewed it a bit, maybe more in the lens of kind of a love story or a toxic love story that that gets very dirty, but not dirty.
Not that dirty.
In a sexy way, but dirty in an emotional way. And then I think that actually shooting the movie, it became a bit more about someone just doing everything he can in order to try to live a life that is for him worth living. And yeah, so I had to kind of readjust a bit my reading of it before shooting.
Alex, you have a lot of experience on sets on Beef, Dave, The Bear, but Lurker is your first feature-length debut as a director. When did you realize that you would step into the role of the director? Because you wrote it. Were you always going to direct it?
No, that was absolutely not the ambition at the time. I really, it was very low stakes. I just wanted to finish something that was longer. And I also want to say, I really didn't spend time on any of those sets. I was just in the writer's room. So I get left out of the fun part. Or really it's often the part that's like the most like war is being on set. So I wasn't super prepared for that real life sort of hyper social, hyper physical event of shooting. And I think I would have never directed the movie if like someone else really wanted to do it. You know what I mean? Like people weren't exactly dying to take this on, and it took sort of producers who knew how to surround a first-time director with people who knew what they were doing to convince me that it was possible. And then looking back, I don't think I would have done it another way because it's so specific. And a lot of what makes the movie work comes down to very small choices whether it's even just down to the authenticity of these, wardrobe or something like that. Just knowing what's going to work for this world, and knowing kind of the movie has a very specific tone, and it has a lot to do with like what I find funny and sort of the minutia of human to human interactions, whether it's just a look, or like a little, a joke, just like going a little bit too far.
Mm-hmm.
That sort of this sort of like cringe nature of like a lot of what makes people uncomfortable in this movie, that is all hyper intentional. And I don't know if another director would have been so sort of honed in on that.
Théodore, Matthew, who you play, he gets kind of close to Oliver. How does Matthew feel about Oliver as a human being?
I think it's very different how he feels about him at the beginning of the film and towards the end. I think probably in the beginning, Matthew is in LA, and maybe celebrity is kind of like the highest ideal there is for him. So to me, Oliver must have felt like almost like a god at the beginning of the film, something that is so unattainable and just kind of miraculous to be in contact with. And so to have an access to him is just a chance that he can't let go. He has to get in. And then I think that he sees the mechanisms that are in place around him and around Oliver and by Oliver, and sort of how inspiration comes and music comes and ideas, and also the social dynamics that are around him, where everyone is fighting for their place, and also Oliver is kind of orchestrating the fight.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that he goes through. He still wants to be there, but he goes through a disillusionment where after the first half of the film, he's like, well, I think they don't have much more than me. They're just at a different place. So I think I kind of see them on the same spectrum, just at different ends of it. And then that's how he's able to shift the dynamic and take power, because he isn't a god. He's just a guy manipulating people, and that's something he can do as well.
Alex, some critics have brought up how this film looks at class, because, Matthew's in retail at the beginning of the film. He can't afford some of the travel in the film. At one point, he's like, I don't have the money to give you. How present was this in your mind when you wrote the film?
Honestly, not that present. And in fact, I wanted to to make it seem like even Oliver and all of his friends are in the same kind of precarious financial situation.
Interesting.
Like if you look closely, like, Oliver's not in like a glass mansion in the hills. He's in like a rental place that like the label put together for him, and that could go away next year. His friends are all not on the payroll. No one is making money really off of Oliver, and it's really about, what happens after this movie that decides if they ever find some stability. So I kind of wanted that to be observable, but obviously it's still within grasp, right? Oliver could eventually get somewhere that he could put all of these people in position to make money or have a real job, but everyone is sort of in a different precarious position right now. Everything is seeming very temporary, and there's a little bit that sort of indicates that.
Yeah.
But I think Matthew is grasping at something that is also grasping at something, and it's all very slippery.
Théodore, I have to ask, there's so much of the film which is just your reaction. What do you like about playing a part that doesn't have dialogue in certain parts, where it's just you and your face?
Um, well, I mean, I never think of it that way. I think, dialogue is in every art. I think for every role, it's um, very often dialogue is I mean, quite obviously, is you're saying something, but it's not really what you're meaning, or the truth is something that you're not saying, or that you're communicating in another way, or and so dialogue is always just keys for what's really happening, and it's always just like trying to understand where the truth is, and what the character of the character is. I think not all the time, of course, but I think most characters, like most of us, have costumes that we put on in social life, or in different forms. So I think with great writing, it's always kind of, was the case for Lurker. It's always great to then have those truths and those kind of epiphanies of what is really happening come to you. But yeah, I think silence is always stronger on film than dialogue. It's where most of it happens, I feel, a lot of the time.
That was filmmaker Alex Russell and actor Théodore Pellerin. The film Lurker was nominated in 4 categories at this year's Independent Spirit Awards. Coming up, we'll talk about the film Twinless, about 2 guys who strike up a complicated friendship after meeting at a bereavement support group for twins. That's coming up. This is all of it.